Product market fit is an expression that's used quite a lot in startup business. It means when you have a product that fits for a market. So somebody wants your product, somebody is willing to pay for your product. There are many descriptions of when have you actually reached that. I like very much a definition that was given by serial entrepreneur Sean Ellis. He looked at a lot of companies that failed and other companies that didn't fail. And then he said, when he investigated these companies, he found out that if around 40% or more of the clients say that they really like the product and they would be sorry if the company disappeared, then the chances of surviving and having success is big. If it's less than 40%, then it's not so big. So to me, a product market fit is that a large number of clients not only like it, but they would be very sorry if the company disappeared. They like it that much. If only 10% of your users like it, there's something wrong. It's not really a product market fit. So how do you reach that? There are three fundamentally different ways to develop towards that. The first one is what you call product-centered development. This is where the product comes from somebody's dream, somebody's imagination. It's an expression of a desire or emotion from the creators of the product. There's no market research, or at least market research is not critical. Picasso didn't do marketing research. He didn't go out and ask people, how many % red do you prefer to have in a painting? Of course he didn't. It came from him. It was his emotions that were expressed on the canvas, and he did it brilliantly. If you do luxury products, you develop a Rolls Royce or a Ferrari or a fantastic handbag, or you do fashion, it's probably not based on market research. It's based on some fantastic people, artistic people, who just want to make their own dream. And it turns out their own dream is a lot of other people's dreams. If you make music, would you do market research to ask how much bass do you want here? No, you don't. It's emotion. So this is the product focused development. And that's fine for some things. For other things, you need to do market research. And then there are two different ways to develop. The first one is the traditional marketing cascade. And this is, that was like, in the old days, was like the only one that was recognized in the management theory. This is where you started by doing a market requirement description or a requirement specification. So somebody who understood the market would write in layman's terms or even described it in an interview, this is what we want to achieve. And then somebody more technical takes that and then they start working on a detailed specification, which, as the word indicates, has a lot more detail. Show it to you and say, yeah, no, this doesn't work, that works, and so on. And then they go through an alpha version, a beta version, and then start testing and so on. That still works for many cases, and especially if it's very, very big and complex. A lot of teams and people have to cooperate. A lot of money has to go into it. You have to build a factory that costs $500 million. You probably work in that way, more or less. But for so many different products and services that startups develop today, the other method is better, and the other method is called agile business development. So in agile business development, here's what you do. You develop first you describe a user case, you describe a market situation. So market situation is something where there's a demand or there's a problem, we have to solve that. A user case is a description of, imagine Joe Smith. Joe Smith comes in, Joe Smith wants to do this. Here's what the product must be like. Joe Smith will then interact with the product in that way. That is a user case. So you describe that and you make a minimal viable product. And the minimal viable product or MVP, as it's often called, means something that is good enough so that you can test it, but it's not what you want to sell. It's a step towards what you want to sell. So with the MVP, you go out and test. So you show it to some people and get a response, or you let some people test it. If it is an online product, you can do what you call A/B splits. So for instance, you have a website, then you have two versions. So people are randomly directed to one version or the other one. And you can see how they interact in the two different ones and find out which one is better. In many cases, you have more than two. You have maybe 10 or 20 or 30 different versions, and you test them against each other. You can also, if you have 20, you find out the 2 or 3 best ones, and then you add some new ones and test them against the other ones. If there are only 2, sometimes you call it an A/B test. If there are many, you call it a split test. You can do many cycles of split testing. And it's very easy with websites, but you can also do a split test of software and physical products. If you have a physical product, you might test by doing what is called a one-night stand. And I know that has another meaning in other parts of life. But a one-night stand in marketing is that, for instance, you get into a warehouse, a supermarket, and they allow you to, for one day or a few days perhaps, put up a booth where you try to sell a product. Maybe you don't know which color they should have. Maybe you don't know if people buy more if they have 20 different ones to choose between, or if they buy more with 2 ones, or you play with the price policy and so on. So you go in, test that with a one night stand, and then you adapt and you test again and so on. Can also be that they just allow you to have some shelf space where you can test it. Another way would be, if it's a physical product, that you make what is called a Pinocchio, which is a little physical mock-up of the real product. There's a funny story about Jeff Hawkins, who invented Palm Pilot. He made a little wood block with the shape of a Palm Pilot, but it was just a wood block. He carried it in his pocket, and then he just went through life. And every time he encountered a situation where he thought the Palm Pilot that he wanted to develop should help him, he actually pulled out this little wood thing, looked at it, then he imagined what should appear on the screen to solve that task that was ahead of him. So that was like the simplest minimal viable product you can imagine, but a minimal viable product can certainly be a mock-up. It can be a clay model. It can be just a visual design, but no functionality behind or anything like that. But it's very important to have that. So you're going through a cycle of making small experimental versions, testing them, correcting, finding out what is wrong, testing again. So very quick cycle of doing that. And in that way, you are like zigzagging towards the right product. And what happens very often in this process is that during the zigzag, you find out that there's something fundamentally wrong. Maybe we are addressing the wrong market. Maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with the product. Maybe there's a feature in the product, something we thought was a minor feature, which turns out to be the big story. So we should center everything around that feature and ignore everything else. Or maybe there's a feature in a product that is disruptive, that we should remove that feature. Something like that. But if you make major changes, those are called pivots. A number of startups do several pivots before they get on the right track. And intuitively, you might think the ones that don't make pivots are better because they had the right plan from the start. But it turns out to be the opposite. The ones who make the pivots perform much better. They are much better at raising money. They are much better at having balanced, successful growth. And it's in their mentality that they respond to changing data. So they're not fixed on one idea. They're willing to see, okay, actually data shows that our initial hypothesis is completely wrong. Now we try this, and now we try this, and now we try this. And it turns out that companies that have more founders are more likely to make pivots, because one person can be too single-minded, but if you're 2 or 3 people, somebody will say, should we do it in a different way? And then you start having a discussion, and you're more likely to do these flexible adaptations. People who respond to data and test data and question their own ideas tend to be more successful. So one thing you should be aware of in testing the product is that you want to have a lot of people's input. But if you write to busy people, venture capitalists or busy business people or scientists and so on, and ask them for a meeting to discuss your idea, you should not be surprised if they say they don't have time for that. I get a lot of emails and messages on social media from people who ask if I could look at what they have. Would you mind reading my business plan, or would you mind, can we meet for a coffee to discuss my idea and so on? And I can certainly understand why people ask that, but my life is like the life of many venture capitalists and many business people is busy. What is much more likely to succeed is that you write, I have a simple question for you, sorry, would you mind, do you have the time to just tell me, do you know somebody who's an expert in this? Or I cannot find on the internet any answer to this question. Do you have an answer to this question? Then people might answer, okay, yeah, I can answer that quickly. And that's just an email. Many people will answer if it's a quick email, a quick reference, quick source, they'll do that. But a meeting with coffee to discuss your business case, probably not.
Do you speak future?